Okay, so today we are going to be looking at the fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And the artist of this painting is Michelangelo. And this project is done by Ethan Ness, Josh Harden, and Graylee Walter. So we are just going to look at a little overview here. This is our painting, The Fall of Man and the Expulsion from the Garden of Eden. The artist is Michelangelo, and then some contemporary artists and composers to go along with Michelangelo in this painting is Raphael, Archidelt, and Palestrina. And if you guys remember, we talked about Archidelt and Palestrina in the music portion of this class, and these were both very famous composers of the time period where Michelangelo painted The Fall of Man and the Expulsion from the Garden of Eden. So here is just a quick little overview of what you're going to find in our presentation. We are going to start with the background. We're going to give here a brief background of Michelangelo and our main group example, which is the fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. And then we're going to move into similar artists, and in there we are going to explain some of the similar artists from the time period, as well as the composers, Archidelt and Palestrina, which we had just mentioned. Next, we will move into talking about the Root 5 rectangle, which is basically the main design principle used in Michelangelo's painting, so we're going to explain a little bit about that. And then lastly, we will move into our main theme of theology in this piece and how Michelangelo's painting relates to the themes of theology. So, to start, we are going to look at some background. So Michelangelo's background, and Michelangelo is this lovely man in the picture in the corner. So Michelangelo was considered to be one of the greatest Italian Renaissance artists, and he actually became an artist apprentice at age 13. So he started very, very young and has worked a long time to get to where he ended up. With that, Michelangelo was actually very harsh on himself and especially judgmental of his own work. Rather than being proud of himself and appreciating his work, he would immediately pick out something that was wrong with it, and nothing was ever done well enough for him. He considered himself to be more of a sculptor than a painter, so he was especially hard on himself during the years of painting the Sistine Chapel, which is where the fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden is located. Because he considered himself a sculptor, he was never very proud of the paintings on his Sistine Chapel, nor felt very qualified to be doing that. In one of his letters, he would write letters during his time working on the Sistine Chapel. He famously wrote, "I am not a painter." So basically just reminding people that sculpting is his thing. He doesn't like painting. Why am I painting the Sistine Chapel? It doesn't look good. He was very, very negative about it all. And he is known for being dissatisfied and his volatile moods. Moving on from that, we are going to look at the background of the painting, which is the fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. So the painting is located on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, and the Sistine Chapel is of the Vatican City. This painting is a fresco painting, which is an early technique used for painting ceilings and walls. And how artists do this is they mix sand and lime, and then they paint on the surface when it is wet, so that when it dries, the chemicals can mix together, which makes the artwork permanent. Michelangelo painted the series of 9 scenes across the central panel of the Sistine Chapel, which is notably the most important part of the chapel, and the Fall of Man, which is the painting that we are focusing on, is the 6th one in those 9 scenes. So if you look up and you're in the Sistine Chapel, the very center panel, there's 9 scenes, starting with just the creation of light and dark, and then ending with what happens after the fall of man. It's very, very beautifully done. Michelangelo started painting the Sistine Chapel in 1508, and it took him 4 years to complete it. So he was working from 1508 until 1512. And like I've mentioned before, Michelangelo never really considered himself a painter and really only considered himself a sculptor, but Pope Julius insisted that Michelangelo paint the Sistine Chapel. And originally, Michelangelo refused because he wanted to focus on sculpting rather than painting, but it's actually really hard to turn down a request from the Pope, so he eventually gave in and agreed. The work was so taxing for him that he permanently damaged his eyesight after the 4 years of hard work. The fall of man and the expulsion from the Garden of Eden is located on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, like I said, which is 68 feet above the ground. So that is very, very impressive. So now we are going to move into talking about some contemporary artists and composers and the Root 5 rectangle with Josh.